Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning into the CEO Journey podcast. You're joined by myself, Tom Halstead, and my co-host, Joe Linsky. Just one thing, thank you very much for everyone who listened to last week's episode. We basically just introduced a podcast, why we're doing it, and then Joe actually interviewed me, asked me some questions about my entrepreneurial journey. And as promised, we're going to do the same today. I'm going to interview Joe, ask him about how his journey started, where he is now, and his vision for the future. So hopefully you find that just as insightful and interesting. I guess we can get straight into it. So Joe, I think it's right to start and ask you about your journey and where it all began. Where did you gain that entrepreneurial flair, and how did it establish?
Well, just before I go into that, I just wanted to clarify some problems from last week. So just quickly, my audio was only half plugged in. So I just wanted to say, apologise for that, and I've pressed the thing in twice this time quite hard, so it should be plugged in, and hopefully my audio is a bit better.
Sorry for the crappy audio on Joe's half.
Yeah, apologise. So my journey started, I would say it was probably 14 or 15. I just started watching just like business TV shows such as Homes Under the Hammer, Dragon's Den and stuff. And I just had kind of a real fascination, but I didn't really realise at the time that it was kind of entrepreneurial. And you know, it's just something that I really just enjoyed watching. So every kind of lunchtime I would just sit with my mum in the lounge and then just watch these programs. But yeah, I would say that's kind of where it really started. And then I guess it was, so I started studying business at A level. And that was when I would say my kind of entrepreneurial journey personally really started taking off. So within the first week, I just kind of loved the course in business. So I actually set up a dog walking company called Walker Dog Walking, which basically I just spotted a gap in my local market, which was kind of cheaper dog walking, because basically the average was probably about 20 to 30 pounds for an hour. So I was just like, you know, take that opportunity. And I was like, why don't you just build a dog walking company and charge 10 or 15 pounds an hour? So, you know, looking back on it, it was really kind of a stupid little thing, because I basically printed 20 leaflets or something, just like Walker Dog Walking, my contact details, and a little paragraph about what we do and what makes it special. And I actually went on just walk myself to the local park. It was probably about 6, I think it was a Tuesday evening, I remember quite specifically. And I went up to people with dogs and just handed them out these letters. I didn't really say anything because I was quite nervous. But yeah, I just handed these out, and then basically it was again the next Tuesday, following Tuesday, I remember it really well. This woman called me on the way back from school and just said, my friend got your invitation, and she was actually walking my dog because I'd broken my hip. So she was my first customer, but also my only customer. It was a really small business, and without going into kind of more details on that was, I guess, my first business, and where my passion just really grew. You know, as I did only have one customer, but for me it was just really good, because I learned so much about kind of engaging with your customer, engaging with the audience, kind of how to please customers. Even though it was small, I probably did about 5-10 dog walks. I probably only made 50 to 100 pounds. But yeah, it was just a really good experience. And then throughout A levels, basically, I was constantly just looking for different ideas, and just kind of gaps in the market or just problems with different things. So I was also doing product design, which isn't the greatest of A levels. My friends kind of made fun of me for doing that, but it just taught you to kind of just constantly look around you at products and stuff which weren't quite working well, or even a new product completely which could help with a task which should be quite simple. So yeah, I was constantly looking for opportunities. I was really interested in property as well, so I started a business called Linsky Homes Limited, which was, the idea was to make a rent-to-rent company, but basically I probably had about less than £100 in the bank. So, you know, property is something I still love and I'm really interested in, but that business made a net profit of £0, but also no losses, thankfully.
I think me and you actually at uni, obviously, were a bit strapped for cash. and we actually thought about doing a bit of rent to rent, didn't we?
Yeah,
For
we did.
property. That's common interest for both of us, isn't it?
Yeah, to be fair, we should come back to that, Tom.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe that's
That might
something
be a
for the
new business
future.
in the future, guys.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So then, well, I haven't.
Joe,
Yeah,
I just wanted to touch on a couple of points that you said. So,
yeah,
it's really interesting, about your dog walking business, and I can really see how, that was your first step into entrepreneurship,
yeah.
and being able to run and manage a company. But I also noticed that you talked about studying business A level. Now, one thing I feel with the education system is that there's not much practical application, and it's all very theoretical. And in my mind, it's difficult for me and it was difficult for me back then to really see how the stuff that I was learning in school and all the theory could be applied to a real world use. So on that, would you say that studying business A level allowed you to gain practical insight, and would you advise it for any young listeners out there who are, deciding what A levels to take, and they're really interested in entrepreneurship and can see themselves as a future business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I think the second question, just answer that first. I think yes, you should study business, because even though I think, just Tom said, there's not a lot of practical application in, business, but yet alone any kind of course. And I do agree that that's a problem with the education system. But without going, into that more, I think for me, if I was just to study the course alone, it would have been, yeah, in some ways quite a boring thing. But I think because I could learn about all these, so for example, we studied cash flow forecast, I could learn about that. And then I was just so excited by everything we studied that I would then go and apply it to my business. So I think in some ways I agree with you, because the education system is designed to teach you about the textbook.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you have the kind of enough passion, then I think you can really make it work. So I think, yeah, in summary, I would say definitely study
Maybe
business.
I guess maybe it was a case that you, as you said, gained your passion for business there. Maybe the things that you were learning weren't necessarily practical, but you were obviously really excited by it, and I guess that sparked your interest and passion in entrepreneurship as a whole, which is interesting. So yeah, no, you were saying you were going to carry on with your journey before I interrupted you.
It's all right. Yeah. So I mean, it does kind of link to what we've been saying. So also on that kind of practical application I was trying to do, I came up with, so basically A level, they gave us the market to research, which turned out to be the restaurant and takeaway market. So that was actually the start of Foodbox, because we were basically studying this, and it was in the height of the pandemic, when restaurants were basically doing no business at all, but companies like Just Eat and Uber Eats were thriving. So I was like, why don't you combine these and make a business? So that was actually when I came up with the idea of Foodbox, which we talked really briefly about last episode, and we'll probably talk about it again next. But we basically, in kind of sentence or two, we basically work with independent restaurants to make meal kits. So like Simply Cook, you get a box of all the ingredients to make the meal, and then that'll be delivered to you, and you'll be able to order via an app which is similar to kind of Uber Eats and Just Eat. So yeah, I mean, that was when Foodbox first came about, and then up until uni, so that was that 20, I think that was 2021, so last Easter-ish. And then up until uni, I loved the idea, and I just loved that there was so much potential. But I think I was just thinking in my mind that I'm young, I've never done a big business before, so I don't know what I'm doing. So I've made progress, but it was very slow and more kind of on the research element. So then I went to uni, started studying business, and I basically became really involved in the Enterprise Bath Society, which if any listeners go into the University of Bath, I'd thoroughly recommend it. So me and Tom met there at the kind of networking event, which was really good. They also do so many things. So they do their own version of Dragon's Den, which is really good. And I think just through all the experiences, we've just learned so much. And obviously, meeting Tom, I think one thing I'd advise everyone with a business is to work with someone, because on your own it can be really boring. And to sacrifice going to the library instead of going out clubbing or something can be a really hard decision. But I think if you've got someone to do that stuff with, it can just be so much more helpful. And also just in your general idea thing, when I was to present an idea to Tom, for example, in branding, he would then say, why don't we do this? And then it wouldn't be an argument, but it'd be more of a kind of formula to create a better
thing. Good debate. And we both have the visions of the company at heart, and we know what's best, and we'll never put our own egos in front of each other. And we always work really well, and we have such a strong relationship outside and also in business. So I think as you say, finding that like-minded person or people is really crucial, and that's actually something that I touched on last week as well. So it's pretty interesting to hear that you think the same.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually, I was just thinking, when I first talked to you about the idea, I think at first I actually said to you, I can't tell you the idea because I was concerned about Tom stealing the idea. Because I didn't really know him, and I was like, he could just steal.
Made me sign an NDA.
Yeah. So I actually made him sign an NDA, which for those of you who don't know is a non-disclosure agreement. It's basically a very simple contract. Just make sure they can't steal your idea. So we went to a camp at the University of Bath called the Lime Tree. And I basically sat down with him, gave him a pen, we signed the contract, and then I just went through the pitch deck with Tom. So that was kind of how we met, I guess. It's like a kind of first dates thing, isn't it, Tom?
First dates for business.
And then just as I said, since then we've just been really just working on Foodbox a lot. There have definitely been periods where we've been, is this going to work or is this not, and kind of a bit more hesitant around the idea. But I think we both just agree on that. Even if Foodbox doesn't work and isn't a success, the amount we've learned and the amount of contacts we've made, we've had a mentor through the university, just the amount of experience and stuff we've learned is just far beyond the consequence of not getting anything from taking the action.
And also, I guess we've formed such a strong partnership between us that we will take that forward into, if Foodbox doesn't work, there'll be something else that we both think of, and that we can then apply that partnership into that business and try and make something of that. But I completely agree with Joe. Like, we've learned so much, even though we're right at the start of our entrepreneurial journeys. We have made so many mistakes, but we've also learned from those mistakes, and we've just gained so much useful information and knowledge that we can then apply into other things. I completely agree. And if Foodbox doesn't work out, then we've got all this insight and knowledge into entrepreneurship and business itself, and I think that's invaluable. So I completely agree with what Joe's saying.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's a big thing I would just say to anyone listening. I think, the first thing would be find someone to work with, because you just work so much better, you bounce ideas, everything. But also just get stuck into as many events around you as possible, because, if I was to go into uni, because going into uni I was quite nervous, just meeting all these new people, these new societies and everything, and I could have been like, I'm not going to do that, and I'm just going to stay with my flat or something. But I think it's kind of just taking that leap, even if it may not look comfortable or something that you kind of want to do. I think it's taking that, because looking back, I would have missed out on so many opportunities. So even if you're not kind of someone who just wants to go to these events or meet new people, I think there's often, if you just Google kind of local business networking events or something, there'll be lots of free ones. Me and Tom used to go to quite a lot of networking things, and they can just be so helpful, and I think just really good for your kind of future business success. But just to kind of finish my entrepreneurial story. So as Tom said last week, this guy basically contacted us on LinkedIn, or it was Tom, and just said he's got this business idea, and he'd like us to kind of just look at it and just see if it's something we think we could work on as well. So we've been doing that, and I think that just really highlights the the benefit of networking and just stuff like that, because and just being open to opportunities, because that's not a launch business yet, and far from it. But again, just the learning put out of that is great.
And I guess the connections from that as well, isn't it? We've met these two other partners, both very experienced. They've obviously, given us an opportunity, and now we've got to prove to them that we're worthy of that opportunity. And we have that contact for the rest of our journey. So yeah, completely agree. So yeah, have you got anything else that you want to add, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, no, just sorry, it's been a bit long. Yeah, so since then, so also basically the business course at Bath includes placement, and that's something I'd really recommend, because it's not been, there's been a few reasons why it's not been the smoothest, but that's not kind of the important part. I think overall it's been a really good experience, because it's in the kind of fintech industry, so it's not an industry which I'm really interested in or anything. And to be fair, the food industry is not, it's not something which I have a real passion about or anything anyway. But I think, as I said, it's just about any opportunity you can get, take it, and just make the most of every opportunity. Because yeah, I've learned just through that, kind of a bit of app development. There's been lots of admin stuff which has been boring, but just generally it's been really kind of good experience. And again, just so I've met, so my boss is obviously the owner of the company, but he's kind of got loads of different connections, and he helps me out, obviously, through giving me the job, but also just kind of pointing me in different directions. And actually, quick shout out to him, because he was the one who actually recommended we do a podcast. I don't think Tom even knows this yet, but he was like, you're young entrepreneurs, people are going to be interested in your journey, and that's the reason I think it was last week or something, I just said to Tom, but Tom, £30 Microsoft, Amazon, let's just order them, start chatting about entrepreneurship, even though we don't really know what we're doing. And yeah, that's kind of I guess my story summed up.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting actually, Joe. It's just great to hear your story, and I'm sure everyone out there listening, how many people there are, will find it.
I think it was 9 on the last one, so
I've not so maybe more than 9, but who knows? To those 9 people, possibly, I think they will find that really interesting, and it's just great to see and hear how your journey started and how it's progressing. I guess from that, so you've touched on some points about making the most of every opportunity, not regretting things, finding a like-minded person or people to work with, and start a partnership with. But what would you say is your biggest, I don't even know if that makes sense, but what would you say is your top advice for aspiring entrepreneurs out there? What would you say to someone who's wanting to start a business, but maybe can't, maybe feels like they don't have the drive or tenacity, or just don't have the skills? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think alongside, my other points I've made, I think would definitely be up there as well. But I think for me, the biggest one would just be to take that first step. And by that, I think, I mean, if you've got a business which you think it'll probably fail, but there's a very small chance, then I would say do it anyway. Unless it requires thousands of pounds of funding, I would say just take that first step, because I've said already, and I'll say it again, but I think just the experience you get out of any business, whether it fails or whether it succeeds, is absolutely huge, and it can be so helpful. And I've said this already, but Foodbox still has a probably quite high chance of failing completely. Sorry, Tom, but as I've said, what we've learned out of it, and just meeting Tom out of it, without Foodbox, I wouldn't have met Tom, I wouldn't have started this podcast. So there's it's just like a ladder, and you've got to start at the bottom, and that one will likely not work, but you've just got to build your way up. That was quite a nice metaphor, actually.
I was about to say, that's very well put.
Yeah, so I'd just say, take that first step. it might be a failure, probably will likely
Yeah.
be. But I think it's just about that first step, and then just building up from that.
So I guess a key point that I'm getting from that then as well is also getting yourself out your comfort zone by taking that first step, because I think both me and you will have this, that nervous feeling and that anxiety that you have. You don't know how people perceive you. You don't know, if you make a complete hash of something. You don't know if your family might be disappointed. You might be deemed a failure. But I guess taking that first step, getting yourself out of that comfort zone, is the most important thing, because you're never gonna, if you stay in your comfort zone, you're never going to learn anything. You're not going to develop new skills. And I'm sure, when we've done pitching events, Joe, we've both been incredibly nervous, haven't we? I mean,
jumpers, I think.
Yeah, no, like big sweat patches, everything, the whole lot. We've been incredibly nervous, but then we've stepped out of comfort zone. We've done the pitch, and we feel a massive sense of achievement. We feel like we've accomplished something. We feel like that we'll be happy doing that again, and that we can do more of those things. We can do it to a bigger audience, and we've just developed new skills. So I think it's so key to push yourself out your comfort zone and put yourself into uncomfortable situations that you're not used to.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think I'd just add on that, before I went to uni, I would never have imagined myself pitching to, 2 dragons, yet alone an audience of 30. And kind of by the end, we did another business kind of pitching challenge where it was a big, it was a big room. And we weren't expecting it, but it was, I mean, if anyone's at uni, it was like kind of almost the size of a lecture theatre, I guess. But it's just, I think you just build confidence as you take these risks, and as you get out your comfort zone more and more. I think you just build your confidence of doing these things, and just the opportunities you get from it are just huge.
Yeah, completely agree. So another thing that I was going to ask is, so obviously we've made a lot of mistakes throughout our journeys. What is the biggest mistake you've made? Have you had any regrets? And if so, what have you learned from making that mistake?
Yeah, so I think, in terms of regrets, to be honest, none come to my head. And I think the reason is because, there's opportunity to have so many regrets in business. Like, for example, working on a particular business for a long period of time when I should be doing something else. But actually, I think in business, you just got to realize that you do make mistakes. So I think I've kind of tried to train my mindset to not, I'm not one of these people who just says I have no regrets in life. I do. But I think I'm just trying to more and more each day become someone who isn't afraid of failure, isn't afraid to make mistakes and then look back on that and then regret it. So I think, I think I wouldn't really say that I have made any kind of mistakes which stand out. As I obviously have. Me and Tom have made many together, and Tom will agree on that. But I think they've all been learning opportunities. If we didn't make those mistakes, then likely we would have done that in the future, because we wouldn't know that would have been a mistake. So I think you've got to make mistakes. When you start a business, you're going to make tens of hundreds of mistakes, but it's better to learn those mistakes now than in the future.
Yeah, so I guess you learn a lot by making mistakes, and don't be afraid to make them, because that's where the best learning opportunities come from, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you for that, Joe. I guess finally, I'd just like to ask you, I know you asked me the same last week, but I think it'd be quite interesting to hear about what is your vision for the future? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think before I answer that question, I would say I would just kind of try and highlight the importance of actually setting goals, because I think someone told, I don't remember who it was or when, but someone just said, if you set a goal of becoming a millionaire by 30, then if you work towards that goal, you might not reach that goal, but you will be a lot closer to that goal, even if you didn't reach that goal. So that's kind of my mindset with goals. So in terms of goals, high hopes, but I would say Foodbox to obviously have launched, been very successful. I'd love this podcast to be heard by millions around the world. it'd probably be heard by 9 again or something. But
We'll keep going at it.
So I think there's Foodbox podcast, the business, which we can't disclose unfortunately, but with these two guys, and hopefully, I think my mindset is constantly looking for opportunity. Even when I've got Foodbox, I've got a lot on my plate. I'm doing the placement, these 3 different businesses, but I'm still constantly looking for gaps. And I'm sure Tom and lots of other kind of entrepreneurs are too. So I think I would say those 3 businesses, but also continue to think of other ideas. If I had the same 3 businesses in 3 years, I would be surprised, but also be, I guess, disappointed I didn't have more, because I think the more businesses you can set up, and the more you can really diversify your portfolio, the more chance there is of one succeeding. If I was just to focus on Foodbox for 3 years and it turned out to be a failure, then I could, fall back onto my uni course and get 9 to 5. But me and Tom said, we both hate the idea of that, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a future podcast. So yeah, I think it's just, really spreading your portfolio of businesses. I would say kind of that's my, I guess, 3-year plan, and also I slipped a bit of advice in there as well, Tom.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I guess one thing from that though, because you talked about having a strong portfolio of ideas and businesses and opportunities. Is there maybe a negative aspect of that, as in having all these ideas and opportunities may stray away from crucial focus on other businesses? Maybe it might be a case that you spread your wings too far, and one might get overlooked. And if you put more time and focus, and if you channeled all your energy into that, then that might have gone places. But because you spread your wings quite far, that it hasn't. I don't know if that makes. I'm actually like awful at phrasing things sometimes, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of do. I think I think I've got the mindset of I've got a business mindset. I'm struggling with words as well. So I would say there's going to be lots of opportunities, and I think you've got to try and narrow down the ones that you think are going to work and the ones that aren't going to work. But also, I think a disadvantage which lots of people would say is the time it takes up, because business does take up time, especially when you work in. My stable source of income currently is my placement, and that's 9 to 5:30. But so I often work in the evenings. We're doing this podcast at 7:30. Well, no, not 90. It's 19:30.
We've got a meeting after that, haven't we?
We've got a meeting after this for the other undisclosed business. So I think it's just, I think a lot of people could just see the time and everything as a constraint. But I think if you're an entrepreneur, if you've got a real desire and passion for business and you really want to make it work, then for me, putting in these extra hours, when we were at uni, not going out with our mates, but spending 2 hours in a business, coming up with a business plan for a deadline. For me, I think a lot of people who aren't entrepreneurs, like my parents, often question why you're doing this. You've made £60 so far out of business, and I was like, yes, but it's something I love to do. I think that's kind of the answer. I would just say it can be a disadvantage, but also actually look at it from another perspective, and you're going to learn a lot out of those extra 2 hours you put in, rather than whatever.
I guess we're willing to sacrifice what other people aren't. Some people won't be willing to. Me and Joe have done long shifts at late times at the library at uni, where we've had to do something such as create a business plan, create a forecast for something, strategize, etc. Do meetings, and other people would have been going out, but we've been on that grind, on that focus. And I think it's the point that we are willing to put the hours in. So I guess if you're willing to do that and you've got the passion for it, then it's not necessarily an issue to have quite a large portfolio of businesses that you're trying to build. Understand that. I think that, I guess that rounds off this episode quite nicely. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening to it. hopefully you've learned a lot. Next episode, I think we're going to talk a bit about Food Box, aren't we, Joe? And just update everyone on what has happened, this past month, what we're doing, and what's in the pipeline for the near future. So yeah, we'll give that update. We'll talk a bit about the business. So hopefully, that might be interesting for people to get a greater depth of understanding on what we're actually working on currently. So yeah, as I say though, thank you very much for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week with another one. Yeah, thank you. Hope you enjoyed.